You now advocate for women who have been the victims of sexual assault and domestic violence, and that's a big problem.
Yeah, you're right. It is sadly a problem that is far too big and too prevalent in our society at the moment. And sadly, it's not, just in our country, it's global and it shows no signs of slowing down, which is truly heartbreaking, especially with, where we're in this century, we have so much information and education, but we have so many negative voices speaking at our next generations, telling them, what to do and how to do it and what to do against women. And it's just heartbreaking.
This is Chocolate and Coffee Break, a compassionate proposition, a space to share stories, bridge divides, and spark meaningful connections. So grab your chocolate, pour your cuppa, and let's break down barriers, one conversation at a time. And now, here's your host, Andrea Pudding.
And welcome to Chocolate and Coffee Break today. I hope you've got your cuppa and you're ready with your chocolate to listen to another heartwarming story. So today we have a beautiful guest, from a young refugee fleeing war-torn Yugoslavia to a compassionate voice for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. Violeta Bagia brings heart and honesty to everything she writes. Now based in Melbourne, she's the author of 17 books exploring themes of love, resilience, and what it means to be human. Most in novel form, so it's amazing stories. Her journey is as powerful as the stories she tells. So, welcome, Violeta.
Thank you, Andrea. It's so nice to be here.
It's wonderful to have you. I'm so glad that you could come. I would love to hear about your stories right from the beginning of where you were a refugee. Well, what your story was with leaving Yugoslavia. I'd like to know a little bit about your experiences with that.
Yeah, of course. So I call this my origin story because I'm a big fan of superhero stories. So I started my life in Yugoslavia, and it was in Bosnia specifically. So that's where I was born. And war broke out when I would have been about 3 or 4. So my father stayed to fight in that war, and my mother and I were given a choice to either stay in with the family and see what happened or try and flee. And my parents made that decision. So we fled over to Germany, where we stayed for a year or so, waiting to hear word on my dad and, whether he was going to come out of that war zone and join us. So it was just a turbulent time waiting around there to see, whether he would be back with us or not. And fortunately, he did. He arrived in Germany a year or so later, and we were reunited, which was great.
It must have been, I just, I can't imagine being in that situation of your mother having to make that decision of leaving your husband behind, but you've got to save your child, so you've got to get out there. Must have been a heart-wrenching moment for her.
I think about that often, especially as a mother myself now. It's a different lens that I get to view it from. Obviously, when I was a child, it was, about survival mode of, oh, how will I make friends? A new kindergarten, a new school, or like new streets, learn the new language. But yeah, now as an adult and as a mother myself, I see things in that perspective, from her perspective, and it's crushing just to think, she left everyone behind. She would have been, in her late 20s. She was just starting to, get that kind of mother glow back, after being, a mum for 3 years. Now she could finally be a young woman again and see her friends and start going out and, having fun while my grandmother babysat me. And then, all of that was taken away. And then coming here, it was all about, well, now you have to learn the language and you have to start working and you just have to integrate. There was no, I feel in a way that that youth was taken from her, and I know she always says it was her choice and she wouldn't do things any different, but it's still crushing to think of her
Yeah.
that way.
Well, what was your experience when you came to Australia and you're suddenly thrust into a different language and a different school? No, from my memories of growing up, I grew up in an area that there was a lot of immigrants. So we had often had children come into school who couldn't speak the language. And I remember one from Yugoslavia, which would have been from a previous conflict, who had fled
Mm.
Yugoslavia, and she had no language skills at all. So what was that like for you?
Look, I honestly have bursts of memories in fragments of being in primary school and, kind of being cornered in the toilet block where other kids would just want to ask all the questions, and I could remember them asking things, obviously the tone of voice changing to ask a question, but I couldn't comprehend what they were saying. And then feeling so so like a fish out of water, not understanding, were they being friendly? Did they want to ask me to play with them? Were they being mean? And I think at that age it would have been, 4 or 5, trying to understand, whether somebody's being kind or just, being a bit smart or cheeky. So it just added that element as well. We're not having that language to back me. So the experience, as you asked, was probably, I probably remember a lot more than I wish I did. So there was a lot of bullying, about being, the stranger or the weirdo that didn't understand the language or said things a little bit funny. Uh, so from there, I think I just kind of pushed myself into, okay, well, if the kids aren't giving you really anything, good to go with, I'm just going to read books and try and learn the language, and be like them. So I guess reading really helped in a twofold way, which was great.
So you would have been so you're learning to read in a language other than the one that you grew up with, which must have been quite
Yep.
challenging.
Yeah, look, I think challenging's look, I always loved the challenge. My parents always said, even as a young child. So I guess it was in my element to learn and push myself in a way that felt, rewarding as well, because then I'd go to school the next day and have some new words or some new phrases, which was really cool. And then yeah, from there it kind of, cascaded. I learned to love reading and I learned to love writing. That came off the back of that.
And that's been a wonderful skill for you. Do you remember I'm thinking that my memories always were of children from immigrant families, but I never thought about how their parents worked, how their parents fitted in, because I keep going back to my childhood memories, because I had Italians living next door and I'd play with the little girls, but their parents didn't speak English either. So did your parents speak English when they came to Australia?
No, no. So my parents, same as me, didn't speak a word of English. My mum and dad were kind of forced to learn a bit of German while we were there.
Mhm.
So add that as well, right? English became our third language that we had to learn, coming from Yugoslavia, and it was just, whatever you could kind of grasp to get by. So I still have memories that, at times they kind of anger me because of just how cruel people can be. But I remember, my parents just like ordering food at, like a fast food place or a drive through, and the kids working in there, they would have only been like 4 or 5 years older than me at the time when I was in early high school. And just, you could hear them sniggering and having a bit of a laugh. And that still makes me choke up now thinking, it's like you don't even know where these people have come from and the things they've done to be here. And, this is the kind of treatment that people are giving them. So yeah, I think a lot of times my parents were trying to be the strong ones for me in order to, get me by and not sort of see those types of sides of people. But I think, I kind of learned early on myself that, staying close to yourself and away from people was sometimes a bit of a safer option. So that's what I embodied and employed most of my high school life as well.
I'm sure you settled in and made lots of friends in time.
Oh, eventually. Eventually, yes.
Yeah. I just, like I said, I'm just complete struggle of thinking about how they do that. And the amazing thing is while people have been cruel and they sniggered in the background, what they don't think about is the fact that your parents know 3 languages. Most Australians only know 1 language, so they are far, far better than us at this. Far better than us. Now's a great time for a break. So we'll be back in just a moment. But first, a big thank you to the sponsors that make these meaningful conversations possible. And while I take a moment to sip on my cuppa and enjoy a little chocolate, you've got time to subscribe, like, and comment about how you're enjoying the show. So watch the short message and support those who support us.
Did you know that only 30% of speakers are women and that only 13% of panels feature women? In order to change that, there is now a directory at womenspeakers.com.au where you can go and search for a speaker. We also have groups on Facebook and LinkedIn under the name Australian Women Speakers, where you can just go and post about your event and women will respond.
How far would you go to keep your loved ones safe when everything else falls apart? In 1945, Ellie and her family risked everything to escape the horrors of war. They fought through frozen landscapes, bombed cities, and an unforgiving world that seemed bent on destroying them. Would you risk your life to keep your family together, even when survival seemed impossible? In the midst of despair, they found the courage to continue. This is their story.
And Silently Falls the Snow, available now on Amazon. Welcome back after the break. So Violeta, I know you've had a quite a journey of lots of different things in your life, and you now advocate for women who have been the victims of sexual assault and domestic violence, and that's a big problem. Certainly bigger in this country than we'd like to see it, and probably worldwide a massive problem. Would you like to share a little bit of your story so that people can understand, help them to get a feel for what that's about?
Yeah, you're right. It is sadly a problem that is far too big and too prevalent in our society at the moment. And sadly, it's not, just in our country, it's global and it shows no signs of slowing down, which is truly heartbreaking, especially with, where we're in this century, we have so much information and education, but we have so many negative voices speaking at our next generations, telling them, what to do and how to do it and what to do against women. And it's just heartbreaking. So for me, the advocacy started because when I was 18, so in high school, I had a boyfriend and the situation quickly escalated to a point where it became a coercive situation. And, without really giving any of my consent or, giving any of my continued consent, I should say, which is a huge conversation these days, which is great. He took what he wanted because that's the way that he operated. And, he kind of pulled everyone into his gravitational pull. And it was, do as he says, because, you should be fortunate enough to be part of, his group and his circle and that group of friends. And I honestly had no idea what a relationship should have looked like at that age. I thought, hey, this is normal. And I went with it and felt, awful every single time because I couldn't, I guess looking back now, my 18-year-old brain couldn't make the connection of what it should be to what it was and understand why, my heart was saying, hey, this isn't right. But everything else was, his words were nice and, all of that sort of thing didn't match up. It just didn't compute. And it was only probably in the last sort of 10 years that this really clicked in my brain. And I realized, hey, this actually shouldn't have been happening. This actually wasn't consensual and it wasn't right. And from there, I think I dipped into a massive spiral. So pretty much since I was 12 or 13, I suffered with all sorts of depression, which I learned later on through therapy, that it was, because of the displacement and having a turbulent childhood and upbringing, and subsequent bullying throughout school. So, I kind of lived in survival mode. So nothing really jolted me that much, if I could put it that way. It's kind of just, well, you just get up and get on with it, and that's life, right? So that's all I knew. And it was only when I sort of started thinking deeply about the situation and unpacking, the words he said, I started realizing, hey, this actually sounds a lot like what other women have said, about relationships that they'd been in with domestic partners, where, they'd say really nice things and then do the complete opposite. And I realized, domestic violence or abuse isn't just about, being hit or being, yelled at. It's other things, and it can come in many forms. And again, the sexual assault, it isn't just, your stranger in an alleyway. Actually, in Australia, that's very rarely the case. It's mostly perpetrated by people known to women. Mm. And that sent me into another spiral, which sent me into wanting to write a book about it, which I did. But that book also sent me to therapy, because it was tough diving into that part of my life again and looking at it through a lens of understanding what actually transpired and understanding why, it had felt so wrong for so long, because it was. And, finally being able to admit what it actually had been and put a name to it, I think was probably a growth that I think I needed as an adult. And, like I said, it sent me to therapy, but I'm so glad that it did, because it helped me gain a lot of closure and understanding for myself. So the advocacy was born. Now I shout it from the rooftops, because, we can't stay silent. These stories need to be shared. And I believe, sadly, every woman has some kind of story that comes to mind.
And that's true. That's what I was thinking, that most women do have some kind of story, because we had that Me Too whole movement where just about every woman was saying, me too, I've had some kind of uncomfortable encounter. Let's put it that, because it can be from an uncomfortable encounter to the absolute worst situation imaginable.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
So what gave you the courage to write your own story?
So seeing a lot of the Me Too movement actually sparked a lot of that power inside me. And I think that's exactly what it stood for, and that's exactly what it set out to do, and it did successfully. It was that element of, okay, you are not alone in this, and you need to speak up so that other people don't feel alone as well. And it was that camaraderie, I think, for me, was, okay, we stand united, so you're not alone anymore. You're not going to be ridiculed. You're not going to be called a liar, because you will have people in your corner to support you and believe you and back you. So it was, honestly, it came off the back of that, which was just an incredible movement. And I'm so grateful that it happened. Obviously terrible that that's, what it was born of.
Yeah, there's just makes that much difference. The more people who speak about it, the more it normalizes it, because there are a lot of women who feel deeply ashamed because of their experiences. So was that
Yeah,
something
I think.
Yeah,
Sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
No, that's something that you relate to, is that shame that they carry.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, even now, post therapy, that shame creeps up, because you kind of sit there and, you rewind these words that they'd said to you, like, if it was so bad, or if you didn't like it, why'd you stay? Why'd you come back? And you think about that and you're like, well, you're right. Why did I come back? Clearly it's my fault. It's on me. I should have done more. I shouldn't have come back, or, or stayed with you, or let you do these things. But, I did. I let them. And I think, the real strength comes from being able to unpack that and take a step back and understand, well, these are these are the power words they use because that's how they control you, right? But, you know, you need to understand as a survivor that it's not your fault, and it doesn't matter what kind of nice words they used. It was all the other actions that spoke in place, and that's what made you stay, and it was the fear, right? And they knew that it would break down those barriers and make you feel you wouldn't be believed, so of course you're not going to say anything. And of course, you know, words like, well, you know, they didn't hit you, or they didn't do any of these other things, or it wasn't, you know, a stranger in an alleyway. So it just gives you that understanding that it's not your fault.
Yeah, and helping women to understand that, especially younger women who are just getting into relationships, to know that these things are not, this is not the normal way for a relationship to be. It's really important.
Correct.
Now, sometimes the conversations that matter are ones that stir something deep within us. So while I take a quiet moment to breathe, refill my cup and nibble a bit of chocolate, I invite you to do the same, and we'll be right back. And thank you for being present through these powerful stories.
Hello, I'm Annie Burke, Cosmic Heart Intuitive. I'm the animal-human relationship enricher. I help animal parents connect with their animals, living or in spirit, through telepathic conversations. And you too can learn how to connect with your animal telepathically with my mentorship program. It's just amazing what you can learn from your animals about their past lives, their current life, and their future lives. It will change your life. It will change their life.
You've ticked the boxes: career, commitments, calendar that's more packed than your pantry, but something's still missing. In Compassionate Purpose, Andrea Putting invites you to stop chasing busy and start living with intention. This book is about real fulfillment through small acts of compassion, purpose-driven service, and meaning that last. No pressure, no perfection, just purpose with heart. Compassionate Purpose, Discovering a Life of Fulfillment. Search for Andrea Putting on Amazon.
Violeta, you are the author of 17 books. That just astounds me. I'd love to hear a little bit about the books that you write.
18 as of
18.
a few weeks ago. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I know I keep bumping that number up, and I feel every time I have a conversation with someone it's shifted a little bit, so I apologize. Yeah, my journey, as you know, for writing started quite early on. It was what I nodded to a little bit earlier in the conversation, that I started reading and writing early on, to combat the kind of isolation during my early childhood. And before my 12th birthday, actually, I wrote my first poem, which was picked up and published and paid for. So that made me officially a published author, which, you know, spurred my writing addiction, which was great. From there, I started kind of fantasizing about these. You know, I think I mentioned at the start that I love superheroes, and I started fantasizing about writing my own. You know, telling all these kind of angsty stories with flawed characters that had, you know, painful pasts, but, you know, they had strength and they overcame adversity to sort of be a hero. And yeah, I started kind of writing my first big novel when I was probably 20. And yeah, by my 25th birthday, I landed my first publishing deal. So that was absolutely amazing. It was everything I had set out to do. And from there, it just spiraled. So I can't control it. The words come out. I write them. I'm just a conduit for the words and the magic that come through. And yeah, I think I adore it. It's definitely my happy place.
Yeah, it sounds like I can see that in you. You just come alive talking about it. But what are the aspirations you have with your books?
So in the beginning, it was always about telling stories that I wanted to read. So like I mentioned, I love the superhero, but I wanted flawed characters, especially women, and that was where I started sort of diving into a sort of the feeling that I had about my past and those kinds of experiences I had. But then I started dabbling in writing. I actually was having a think the other day about watching how, you know, it started from writing the science fiction type work that I do. And there was like this slow almost incline of moving from science fiction into reality until finally I decided, hey, I'm going to write my story. And, most books usually take me maybe like, I don't know, like 6 to 10 months to write, depending on the complexity and the research. But this story that I wrote, Andrea Nekitch is Not Fine, took me 23 days because it was just a story that had to be told. And, it came out, it completely overtook me, my entire being for that period of time. And yeah, it just came out and it was completely organic, which I think is what made it as special as it is.
Yeah. So I see that book's about an immigrant child and having to go through that experiences that you went through.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've taken your writing into a new venture so that you can help women. Can you share what you're doing with that?
Yeah, so Andrea Nekitch was born out of that passion and that need to tell my story. So it's a fictionalized retelling because, for in literature, you obviously have to meet, certain requirements for the genre and the word count and all of that exciting stuff. So it's obviously been fictionalized and also to cover, myself for legal reasons, etc. And the reason that I wanted to write it in that way is that it's more relatable to more people across the board, because regardless of whether you'd experienced something like that or grew up as an immigrant, every single person growing up in Australia in that time period will relate to something in that book. And that to me was the most powerful thing I could do, especially for young ladies growing up. If they were going through something painful or difficult, they could look at this book, pick it up. It could be a warm friend, a nice hug, sitting in the library, and just feel, hey, I'm not alone, even if they felt like they were, from a family or friend perspective.
Yeah. I think that would be very powerful. I might have to read that one. So now you've started coaching women who have been through some of the experiences that you've been through to help them. Can you share with us about that?
Yeah, that's right. I started my business, Right Point Coaching, not long ago, and that came off the back of actually a friend from high school reached out to me and said, "Hey, I've been following your journey from the sidelines, just wanted to reach out and ask, do you do any coaching?" And at that point, no, I hadn't even considered it. It wasn't even a blip on the radar, but I had a long think. I thought, why not? Somebody's asked about it, so maybe there are other people that might benefit from this. So we sat down, kind of discussed the way he had gone through school and some of the things he'd felt and experienced, and I realized this is a person that has a painful or difficult story and it needs to come out, and he's reaching out to me to ask for help to write it, right? And I thought that was just incredible. How could I say no to something like that when someone's reaching out and asking for help? And so I kind of put together like a little rough idea of what coaching could look like. And from there it grew. And organically, I haven't even marketed it in the way of helping people write their difficult stories. It was just, I'm helping you write your story or tell a story, even if it's, a book about a princess in a tower with dragons. It doesn't matter, right? I can help you write your story with a no fluff approach. But everyone that's come to me has come with stories that have just, moved them or shaken them in ways where, like with me and Andrea, it just wouldn't leave me. It consumed me until it was done. And I realized if I can help somebody else do that, then I've set out to do the right thing in my life. So that's where my journey's taking me at the moment.
Yeah, and it's such a powerful thing to sit and write, because so many people, it's kind of very much a therapeutic thing that people do. Because I have people asking me about writing because I'm a publisher and I've written a few books, not many as yours, but people do ask that, and they want it because they think, well, I've got a short story to share, and a lot of them are just kind of, it started by therapy to pull out their stories. So I can see how powerful that can be with what you're doing, having that experience yourself to be able to share that with with other people.
Yeah, 100%. Writing is cathartic. Everyone should do it.
So I want to thank you, Violeta, for being a guest. You've been a delight. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today and holding space for the kind of conversations that matter. One rooted in courage and healing, the power of voice. Violeta's journey reminds us that even from the most difficult beginnings, something beautiful can rise. So as we wrap up, I invite you to share a chocolate coffee break with someone whose story you haven't heard yet, and share it with them.